This video is brought to you by Brio Beardscape. If you are a bearded man, and let's face it, you should be, you should check out the best trimmer I've ever used through the link in the description below. Red and white striped, sometimes with a bit of blue, a barber pole twisting next to a small storefront signifies a place where men can get a haircut, a shave, and a bit of masculine bonhomie. But this was not always the case. Back in the day, the red and white we associate with good grooming used to represent blood, bandages, leeches, and pain. As long as people have been making razors of any material, there have been barbers. In Egypt and other ancient cultures as early as 3500 BC, barbers were often priests, whose main job was to keep evil spirits from possessing people. They did this, among other ways, by trimming, styling, and shaving off the hair of the body. This role morphed into something that much more closely resembled a modern-day barber by the time of the Greeks in the 5th century BC. Setting up in an agora, the Greek barber styled hair, trimmed beards, and encouraged gossip. In Rome, barbers were known as tonsores, and many well-groomed Romans made a stop at their shops as part of their daily routine. Even in the extremely misnamed so-called Dark Ages, barbers were in demand. Many monks, like the Benedictines, embraced the tonsura hairstyle, where the crown of the head is shaved with only a narrow ring of hair remaining. Barbers were employed to manage this grooming, and in addition, because of papal prohibitions, barbers were also responsible for conducting surgeries. Historically, the Roman Catholic Church believed that surgery violated the Holy Spirit's temple, the human body. In line with the several meetings of the Church, including the Councils of Tours in 1163 and 1179 and the Fourth Lateran Council of 1215, they decreed that priests and monks who had a long history of medical and surgical scholarship were forbidden from performing surgeries. Although priests continued to conduct research and serve as physicians for the wealthy, they relied on the barbers for surgical procedures and bloodlettings. In addition to the wealthy, barbers also helped regular people. Lancing boils, setting breaks, pulling teeth, and amputating gangrenous limbs were common procedures, and so too was trepanning, a process by which a hole was drilled in a person's head to reduce pressure on the brain and otherwise drain out the evil forces that apparently caused mental illness and epilepsy. Bladder obstructions were treated with catheters, sometimes inserted through an incision because the syphilis-racked patient's urethra was completely blocked, and kidney stones were also removed with minor surgeries. But perhaps the procedure most commonly associated with barbers in the Middle Ages was bloodletting. Using a narrow blade, the barber would open a vein and allow the blood to pour down into a small brass bowl. By way of advertising, many barbers would display these bowls of blood in their shop window so that people would know that they performed the service. During the procedure, the patient would grip a rod to encourage blood flow, and white strips of bandage would be used to clean the patient. Dirty bandages were washed and hung to dry on the grasping rod outside of the shop. For those wounds too tender or hard to reach, rather than lancing and bloodletting, the barber would apply special leeches known as hirudo medicinals, which emitted a natural anesthetic and an anticoagulant while it sucked blood. These healthy, hungry leeches were typically kept on hand in a separate brass bowl. As for the origin of the famous pole, this is a study in semiotics. It's generally thought that the white on the pole represents the bloodletting rod that was grasped by the patient during the procedure, and the red stripes derive from the bloodied bandages often hung out to dry on the pole after they'd been cleaned as well as possible. As for the rest, things get a little murkier. It's thought that the brass ball at the top may represent the bowl of leeches, while the brass at the bottom evokes the bowl that catches the blood. For those poles that have a blue stripe added, many believe this represents the veins. Of course, sometime in the Middle Ages, the profession of surgeon emerged, and afterwards, surgeons and barbers competed for customers. To end the conflict, Parliament passed and King Henry VIII approved legislation that united both into the Barber Surgeons Company in 1540. Subsequent legislation was passed that further required barbers and surgeons to specialize and distinguish between the two groups by either having a red and white pole for surgeons or one that was blue and white for barbers. So from this, perhaps the blue was simply arbitrarily chosen to represent traditional grooming services. Whatever the case, in 1745 the surgeons split from the barbers and formed the Company of Surgeons that eventually became the Royal College of Surgeons of London in 1800. Barbers as surgeons, rather than just people who groomed hair, gradually fell out of fashion, and it is believed that, for instance, the last barber surgeons in England went the way of the dodo in the early 1800s. Now, let us all face it, we can't all head to the barber every time we need a shave, and that's where Brio Beardscape enters the picture. The Brio Beardscape is a high-quality male trimmer that addresses all of your beardy needs. Now, most trimmers, they use stainless steel, which that all sounds pretty good, but Brio, they actually use a ceramic blade up here that's 4 times hardier, and that gives you a sharper edge and a cleaner shave. Also, it's adjustable. You've got a little bit of adjustment right on here, but you can also add this attachment. There's actually a bunch of attachments, so you can get your beard the length that you want. You can kind of grow it out and keep it neat. Also, it's got a super long battery life. I'll just turn it on, and you can see at the bottom it'll tell you I've got 207 minutes left, but I've been using it a while. It will last you a solid 4 hours before a charge. Comes with this neat little docking station. You just pop that into there, and there you go. Now, normally this is $64, but you can get it for $58, and you also get a free case. You can do that through the link in the description below. And let's get into those bonus facts. Have you ever wondered how RX came to be the symbol for medical prescriptions? Well, want to know more? While there are a few commonly put forth explanations as to how we ended up with the RX symbol, it's generally thought that it has medieval roots as an abbreviation for a form of the late Latin word recipiere, meaning to take. The imperative form of this word, recip, meant take, as in take two and call me in the morning. By the 1580s, the word recip had been slightly modified in Middle French to recipe and had come to mean medical prescription. In fact, this meaning of the word prevailed until the mid-1700s, when it was also applied to food preparation. Regardless, when giving a prescription, physicians typically begin their directive with the command recipe, which ultimately was abbreviated to RX. Other common abbreviations used in the medical field that also included an X are things like DX for diagnosis, SX for signs and symptoms, and HX for history. And now for another bonus fact. Speaking of haircuts, it turns out that Leonardo DiCaprio's haircut in Titanic caused a bit of a hoopla in a certain region of the world where the Taliban held sway. You see, Titanic wasn't just a hit in the Western world. Something about it tugged at the heartstrings of Afghan boys as well. Previous to this, most Hollywood movies that made it big in Afghanistan were almost exclusively action movies, with Rambo 3 probably holding the title for most popular American movie in Afghanistan. Despite the Taliban's strict ban on American cinema, VHS copies of Titanic flooded Kabul's black markets. Titanic mania swept the country and had a resurgence after the Taliban were removed. Before the crackdown and after the government was overthrown, posters of the film could be seen hanging on countless Afghan walls. Even extra-large vegetables, from tomatoes to cucumbers, started to be referred to as Titanic vegetables. There was also Titanic mosquito killer, Titanic body spray, Titanic toothpaste, Titanic sandals, Titanic wedding cakes. You get the idea. One fabric seller in Kabul, Ali Ahmad, states, "Still, everyone plays Titanic because the story is good. It's a real story. That's why people still like it. And the love parts, that's what we like." But alarm bells didn't start going off for the country's fundamentalist government until teenage boys started emerging from downtown barbershops sporting DiCaprio-style Titanic haircuts. This incited the rage of the Taliban, and soon the police started cracking down. Numerous teens and at least 30 barbers were arrested because of the DiCaprio cut. Others were simply beaten and forced to shave their heads. Because of this, many Afghan boys sporting the new cut took to wearing hats, caps, or turbans to hide their manes when they were in public. Slightly older young men actually grew beards to try and blend in better while sporting their Titanic haircut. Brave barber Aminullah Nassif, who never actually saw the film, was not to be dissuaded though, and he started giving the Titanic cut in secret with the first customer he had, who requested it, showing him a Leonardo DiCaprio postcard and asking to be given the Titanic cut. Nassif became a popular underground barber among the Titanic-loving male teenage customers, and many of his customers arranged to meet at his shop at night in order to get the secret haircut. As one 16-year-old, Nawid Merkal, who got the Titanic cut but then was forced to have it shaved off, said, "I like the hairstyle of the film star. He was a handsome boy, and he looked very handsome with that haircut." While every movie star is probably at some point flattered by imitations of himself or herself, DiCaprio may well be the only movie star in history whose followers risked a physical beating and potential arrest for imitating his hairstyle. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Also, check out Brio Beardscape. It's awesome. You can find a link to that below. Special offer if you're watching this video. Check it out. It's just great. And as always, thank you for watching.